Would a Russian paid agent do less than he? Let that sink in. I want you to really, truly process that sentence. That is not a quote from a Democratic strategist. That is not a headline from MSNBC. That is not a talking point from the DNC War Room. That is a direct, public quote from Republican Congressman and retired Air Force Brigadier General Don Bacon, referring to Donald Trump's hand-picked special envoy to Ukraine, Steve Witkoff. Let's be extremely clear about what is happening right now. We are not watching a policy disagreement. We are not watching a difference of opinion on foreign aid or a debate about fiscal responsibility. We are watching the complete and total implosion of the America First myth. And it is happening so fast and so violently that even Donald Trump's own defense hawks are screaming from the rooftops that the President of the United States is effectively getting rolled by Vladimir Putin. If you're watching this and feeling like you're taking crazy pills because the self-proclaimed strongman is currently begging for a deal that surrenders American interests to a war criminal, you are not alone. And apparently, neither is Don Bacon. Because here is the reality that the MAGA echo chamber is desperately trying to hide from you. The Republican Party is in open revolt against Donald Trump's new peace framework. And they are not using polite language. They are using words like capitulation. They are using words like betrayal. And in the case of Representative Bacon, he is asking the question that we have all been thinking for years, but were told was hysterical or Trump derangement syndrome to say out loud. Is the president's inner circle working for the United States, or are they working for Moscow? This week, a bombshell leak from Bloomberg revealed transcripts of calls between Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the Kremlin. And what did we find? Did we find a tough negotiator putting America's foot down? Did we find the art of the deal? No.
So what exactly is in this plan that has lifelong Republicans sounding the alarm? Because if you listen to the Trump spin machine, they will tell you this is a masterful negotiation. They will tell you it's about stopping the dying. But when you actually peel back the curtain and look at the specifics, which we are going to do right now, you realize that this isn't a negotiation, it is a ransom payment. We are talking about a 28-point framework, and I want to walk you through the bullet points that have Senator Roger Wicker, the ranking Republican on armed services, losing his mind. First, the territorial concessions. The plan doesn't just ask Ukraine to accept the loss of Crimea, which Russia illegally annexed in 2014. It doesn't just ask them to accept the loss of the territory Russia currently occupies. No, it goes further. This framework demands that Ukraine cede the entirety of the Donbas region. That includes cities and towns that Ukrainian soldiers are currently holding, cities that Russia has failed to capture after 3 years of brutal warfare. Think about the logic of that for a second. Donald Trump isn't asking Ukraine to freeze the lines. He is asking them to retreat from their own land, hand over free Ukrainian citizens to Russian occupation, and call it peace. In any other context, we would call that what it is: unconditional surrender. But wait, it gets worse. Point number 4 in the framework caps the Ukrainian military at 600,000 personnel.
We found Witkoff coaching Putin's aides on how to flatter Donald Trump. We found him telling the Russians that if they just tell Trump he is a man of peace, they can get whatever they want. It is pathetic, it is humiliating, and it confirms every single worst fear we had about a second Trump term. That is, narcissism is not just a character flaw, it is a national security threat. But wait, it gets worse, because this isn't just about a phone call. It's about the plan itself, a plan that Senator Roger Wicker, the Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, just publicly trashed. He didn't mince words. He called it a surrender. Senator Mitch McConnell, the man who has spent the last decade obstructing everything the Democrats try to do, the man who single-handedly reshaped the judiciary to favor conservatives, looked at Trump's plan and essentially said, "This is a disaster." McConnell compared it to the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. He called it rewarding Russian butchery. Think about the magnitude of that statement. Mitch McConnell does not go rogue unless the House is on fire. He is the ultimate partisan operator. He values party unity above almost everything else. And yet, here he is, effectively telling the world that the president of his own party is about to hand over Europe to a dictator. So if you thought the GOP civil war was over because Trump won the election, think again. The call is coming from the inside. And for the first time in a long time, the people screaming fire are wearing red ties. They are saying the quiet part out loud. Donald Trump is weak, and the vultures are circling. Now, let's look at the evidence, because when you see what is actually in this peace plan, and when you see the receipts of exactly what these Republicans are saying, you will understand exactly why they are panicking. It isn't because they suddenly grew a conscience. It's because they realize the ship is sinking. Now, why would Russia want that? Why would Vladimir Putin, who has invaded his neighbor multiple times, insist on a hard cap on their defense forces? Because he wants to make sure that next time he invades, it's easier. It is a feature, not a bug. And Donald Trump's team didn't just agree to this, they proposed it. They are stripping a sovereign nation of its right to self-defense and handing the keys to the aggressor. And honestly, it's pathetic. But the most damning part, the part that has Don Bacon asking if our officials are on the Kremlin payroll, is the leaked transcript between Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Yuri Ushakov. We need to talk about Steve Witkoff. This is a real estate guy, a golf buddy. He has zero diplomatic experience, zero national security background, and yet he is the man Donald Trump sent to negotiate the future of European security. And thanks to Bloomberg, we know exactly how that went. In the transcript, Witkoff isn't pushing back on Russian demands. He isn't threatening consequences if Russia refuses to withdraw. He is coaching the Russians. He is literally heard telling Ushakov, "Just reiterate that you respect he is a man of peace. That is what he needs to hear."
Let's stop and really look at that. The President of the United States, the man who claims to be the toughest negotiator in history, the man who wrote The Art of the Deal, is so psychologically fragile, so desperate for validation from strongmen, that his own envoy's primary strategy is to tell the enemy to flatter him. This isn't 4D chess. This is a toddler being distracted with a shiny object while the adults rob the house. Witkoff is effectively telling the Kremlin, you don't need to give up territory, you don't need to pay reparations, you don't need to admit guilt, you just need to stroke his ego, and he will give you whatever you want. And clearly, it worked. Because the framework that emerged from these talks is indistinguishable from a Russian wish list. This is why Representative Don Bacon's tweet matters so much. Bacon isn't a Reno squish. He is a retired brigadier general. He spent his life in the Air Force. He understands intelligence. He understands leverage. And when he sees an American official acting like a defense attorney for Vladimir Putin, he recognizes it. His tweet, "Would a Russian paid agent do less than he?" is the most devastating indictment of the Trump administration we have seen from a Republican since January 6th. He is stripping away the veneer of diplomacy and calling it what it is, complicity. And look at who else is joining the chorus. Roger Wicker. This is a man who was voted for every defense budget in history. He's a hawk's hawk. And he issued a statement saying that this plan rewards Russian butchery. Butchery.
That is not the word you use when you are having a minor policy disagreement with your party's leader. That is a moral condemnation. Wicker knows that by forcing Ukraine to cede land they still hold, the United States would be directly complicit in the torture, deportation, and filtration camps that follow every Russian occupation. He knows that this plan violates every tenet of the Reagan doctrine that the GOP used to pretend to care about. Peace through strength. This is peace through submission. And here is the reality that the MAGA crowd doesn't want you to see. The Russians are laughing at us. State media in Moscow isn't hiding it. They are celebrating Witkoff as constructive. They are praising Trump's pragmatism. Of course they are. If you went to a car dealership and the salesman offered to pay you to take the Ferrari, you'd call him pragmatic too. You'd call him the greatest salesman who ever lived. But in this scenario, America is the dealership, and Donald Trump is giving away the inventory for free because the customer told him he has a nice tie. This brings us to the most infuriating part of the forensic evidence, the NATO ban. The framework explicitly demands that Ukraine constitutionally enshrine a pledge never to join NATO. This has been Putin's demand since day one. It was his pretext for the invasion. And for 3 years, the Western world held the line, saying that no dictator gets to veto the alliances of a free democracy.
Donald Trump just handed him that veto on a silver platter. By agreeing to this, Trump isn't just selling out Ukraine, he is validating Putin's worldview that Eastern Europe is nothing more than a buffer zone for Russian imperialism. He is telling the world that American promises of sovereignty come with an asterisk that says, terms and conditions apply, subject to Kremlin approval. Make no mistake, this is not a peace plan. A peace plan involves compromise from both sides. A peace plan involves security guarantees. This is a capitulation framework dressed up in a suit and tie. It is a document that legitimizes the acquisition of territory by force. And the reason Republicans like Bacon and Wicker are in a full-blown panic is because they know exactly what happens next. They know that you cannot satisfy a crocodile by feeding it your arm. You just give it the strength to eat the rest of you. And yet, here we are. The America First president is putting Russia first. The Law and Order Party is legitimizing international crime. And the strongman is being walked on a leash by a former KGB agent who knows exactly which buttons to push. But to really understand how we got to this point, how the Republican Party went from Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, to Mr. Putin, take whatever you want, we have to zoom out. Because this didn't happen overnight. This is the culmination of a pattern of behavior that has been building for years. But to really understand how we got to this point, how the Republican Party went from Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, to Mr. Putin, take whatever you want, we have to zoom out. Because this didn't happen overnight. And if you think this is just about Steve Witkoff being incompetent, you are missing the bigger picture. This is not a glitch in the MAGA software, this is the operating system. Let's rewind the tape, because we have seen this movie before and we know exactly how it ends. Do you remember Helsinki, July 2018? I want you to visualize that stage. Donald Trump standing next to Vladimir Putin. The American press corps asks the President of the United States, standing next to the man who attacked our elections, who he believes. Does he believe the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA? Or does he believe the former KGB agent standing next to him? And what did Donald Trump say? President Putin says it's not Russia. I don't see any reason why it would be. He didn't just blink, he folded. On the world stage, in front of every camera on Earth, the President of the United States threw his own intelligence community under the bus to protect a dictator. It was the single most submissive performance by an American president in history. And the Republican Party, the party of Reagan, the party of peace through strength, they didn't revolt. They didn't impeach him. They made excuses. They told us he was just trying to get along. But he wasn't trying to get along. He was submitting. And that brings us to the first impeachment. I know, it feels like a lifetime ago. The news cycle moves so fast we forget, but you have to remember why Donald Trump was impeached the first time. It wasn't for a tweet. It wasn't for a rally. It was because he illegally withheld nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, aid that Congress had already approved because he wanted Volodymyr Zelensky to manufacture dirt on Joe Biden. He treated Ukrainian lives as a bargaining chip for his own personal political gain. He was willing to let Russian tanks roll across the border if it meant he could win an election. So when Steve Witkoff goes to the Kremlin in 2025 and tries to cut a deal that sells out Ukraine, do not act surprised. Donald Trump has been trying to sell out Ukraine for a decade. The only difference is that now he doesn't have the adults in the room to stop him.
He doesn't have James Mattis. He doesn't have John Kelly. He has loyalists. He has yes men. He has people like J.D. Vance. And we need to talk about J.D. Vance because the Vice President of the United States is on the record, on camera, in high definition, saying the quiet part out loud. In February 2022, days before Russia launched its full-scale invasion, J.D. Vance said this.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. I don't care. That is the ideology of the modern GOP. It isn't isolationism. Isolationism is a coherent philosophy. This is nihilism. It is a complete moral vacuum where sovereignty doesn't matter, democracy doesn't matter, and international law is a joke. And why? Why has the party that spent 50 years fighting communism suddenly decided that the former head of the KGB is a misunderstood hero? Because they envy him. Make no mistake, Donald Trump does not want to defeat Vladimir Putin. He wants to be Vladimir Putin. He looks at Russia and he doesn't see a repressive autocracy. He sees a paradise where the leader can jail his opponents, silence the press, and rule for life without annoying things like checks and balances or judges getting in the way. Remember what Trump said when Putin invaded in 2022? While bombs were falling on Kiev, while maternity wards were being evacuated, while families were fleeing for their lives, Donald Trump went on a radio show and called Putin's strategy genius. He called it savvy. He said he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. He was cheering for the bad guy. And that is why this peace plan looks the way it does. It isn't a negotiation. It is an homage. Look at point 27 of the leaked framework. This is a detail that almost slipped under the radar, but it is the key to understanding Trump's psychology. The plan calls for a peace council to monitor the agreement. And who does the plan say should head this council?
President Donald J. Trump. He wants to put his name on the surrender. He wants to brand the capitulation like it's a steak or a hotel. It is narcissism on a geopolitical scale. He is willing to dismantle the security architecture of Europe just so he can have a photo op where he signs a piece of paper and claims he solved the war. But there is one more piece to the puzzle: the 2016 Republican platform. We talk a lot about the Steele dossier and the Russia hoax, but there is one fact that is indisputable. At the 2016 RNC convention, the Trump campaign made only one significant change to the official Republican Party platform. They watered down the language on Ukraine. They removed the call to provide lethal defensive weapons and changed it to appropriate assistance. Think about that. Of all the issues, taxes, abortion, immigration, healthcare, the one thing the Trump campaign cared enough to change was making sure we didn't give weapons to Ukraine to fight Russia. That was 9 years ago. So when you see Steve Witkoff coaching the Russians today, or when you see this 28-point surrender plan, do not let anyone tell you this is a new strategy. This has been the strategy since day one. The only thing that has changed is that the Republican Party has finally stopped pretending to fight it. They have been hollowed out. The John McCains are gone. The Mitt Romneys are gone. The party now belongs to the Tucker Carlsons, who go to Moscow and marvel at the grocery stores while dissidents are murdered in prison.
They have normalized the idea that America is the problem and Russia is the victim. They have convinced millions of voters that supporting a democracy against an invasion is warmongering, but handing that democracy over to a dictator is peace. It is the greatest psychological operation in political history, and it worked. But here's the terrifying part. We are no longer talking about campaign rhetoric. We are no longer talking about opposition research. We are talking about the actual policy of the United States of America. And if this plan goes through, if Trump and Witkoff succeed in forcing Ukraine to its knees, the consequences will not stay in Eastern Europe. They will come home. Because once you tell the world that boundaries can be redrawn by force and that America will help you do it if you flatter our president, the world becomes a much, much more dangerous place. So where does this leave us? If you are sitting there thinking, well, Brian, Ukraine is far away, why should I care if they lose the Donbass? Why should I care if Trump wants to play nice with Putin? I need you to listen to me very carefully, because this isn't about Ukraine. It never was. Ukraine is just the testing ground. It is the laboratory where the dictators of the world are running an experiment to see exactly how much the United States of America has given up. They are testing our resolve. They are testing our sanity. And thanks to Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff, they are getting the green light to burn the house down.
This is the terrifying reality of the future if this behavior goes unchecked. The moment the United States signs a piece of paper telling Russia you can keep what you stole, we are effectively dissolving the international order that has kept us out of a world war for 80 years. We are sending a message to every tyrant, every warlord, and every autocrat on the planet that borders are optional. Do you think Xi Jinping isn't watching this? Do you think he isn't looking at Taiwan right now and doing the math? If Donald Trump is willing to sell out a European democracy just because a Russian envoy flattered him, what do you think he's going to do when China blockades Taiwan? Do you think he's going to send the fleet? Or do you think he's going to say, well, Taiwan is far away and she told me I'm very handsome, so let's make a deal? This peace plan guarantees war. It guarantees that China moves on Taiwan. It guarantees that Iran moves on its neighbors. Because the deterrent of American power, the idea that if you cross a line, there will be consequences, has evaporated. Donald Trump isn't bringing peace in our time, he is bringing chaos. And let's talk about NATO. The America First crowd loves to say that NATO is a drain on our resources. But the reality is that NATO is the only thing standing between us and a global conflict that would require American boots on the ground. By demanding that Ukraine be constitutionally banned from NATO, Trump is shattering the alliance's credibility. He is telling our allies in Poland, in Estonia, in the Baltics, you are on your own.
And when those countries get attacked, because Putin has already said he wants to restore the Soviet Empire, we will have a choice. We either send American soldiers to die in a war that we could have prevented by just supporting Ukraine now, or we stay home and watch the Western world collapse. That is the choice. That is the binary. Republicans like Roger Wicker and Mitch McConnell understand this. They aren't panicked because they love Zelensky. They are panicked because they know that weakness is provocative. They know that appeasement never, ever works. History has taught us this lesson in blood. We learned it in 1938. We learned it in 1939. And apparently, Donald Trump slept through that history class because he is trying to sign the Munich Agreement 2.0 and frame it as a victory. But the stakes are even higher than geopolitics. The stakes are moral. If we allow this administration to function as a subsidiary of the Kremlin, we are accepting the complete corruption of our own government. Go back to Don Bacon's question. Would a Russian paid agent do less than he? The answer is no. If a Russian agent had infiltrated the White House, their top priority would be to cut off aid to Ukraine. Their second priority would be to weaken NATO. Their third priority would be to divide the American people. Donald Trump has done all three.
Whether he is doing it because he is compromised, or because he is incompetent, or because he is just a useful idiot for Vladimir Putin, it does not matter. The result is the same. The President of the United States is acting as an asset for a hostile foreign power. And if we normalize this, if we shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's just Trump being Trump, then we have lost our country.
We have accepted that our foreign policy is for sale to the highest bidder, or specifically, the best flatterer. So, what is the endgame here? The endgame is a world where the United States is no longer a superpower, but a client state. A world where truth is whatever the great leader says it is. A world where peace means surrender. We are standing on a precipice. The Republicans in Congress, the ones who haven't completely sold their souls yet, are screaming for help. They're leaking transcripts, they're issuing statements, they are trying to wake us up. And we have to listen. We cannot let the media both sides this story. We cannot let them frame this as Republicans divided on strategy. This is not a strategy dispute. This is a loyalty dispute. This is a dispute between people who serve the Constitution and people who serve the Kremlin. We have to arm ourselves with these facts. When your uncle or your coworker tells you that Trump is a peacemaker, you need to show them the Wicker statement. You need to show them the Bacon tweet. You need to show them the Witkoff transcript where he begs the Russians for flattery. You need to tell them real strength isn't letting a dictator walk all over you. That's weakness.
And make no mistake, the MAGA movement is banking on your exhaustion. They are banking on you being too tired, too cynical, or too distracted to care about a peace framework in Eastern Europe. They want you to tune out. Don't give them that satisfaction. Because right now, the only thing necessary for the triumph of this corruption is for good people to do nothing. The GOP Revolt is a crack in the armor. It is proof that the emperor has no clothes. It is proof that even his own generals know he is a danger to the republic. We have to keep the pressure on. We have to amplify these voices. We have to demand answers. Because if we don't hold the line here, if we let them sell out democracy abroad, it is only a matter of time before they finish selling it out right here at home. The alarm is ringing. Don Bacon rang it. Roger Wicker rang it. Mitch McConnell rang it. The question is, are we going to wake up in time? I'm Ethan Cole. Don't look away.